All right, we should be live.
Okay, good morning, everybody. If anyone's just joined us, you missed the sort of the note that Secretary McCord will be joining us just a little bit late. So with Ariane and Andrew on deck and myself, we're going to go on and proceed and get started as we can. We like to do the call to order, which this is, and then the roll call just to acknowledge who's on board and make sure that we have our quorum. Andrew, maybe? Thanks,
Yep,
sir.
absolutely. So just starting at the top of the order here, we know Secretary McCord should be on his way. Next up is Elizabeth Hughes.
Present.
Bert Cummerell.
Here.
Natalie Chabot.
Here.
Bob Campbell.
Here.
Nicholas Redding. Dan Spedden.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here.
Good morning.
Hey, Dan.
Dennis Doster.
Present.
Pete Lesher. John Kennard. Marianne Harms. Janice Hayes Williams. Oh, okay, I see. So Marianne will be joining us, but is having trouble. Thank you.
She's having trouble with the link. I don't know if there is a way to help her with that. She just texted me.
Ah, yes, we can give her a phone number to call in on.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, actually, it looks like she has just arrived.
Great.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Let's see here. Janice Hayes Williams. Amy Seitz. Lee Towers.
Here.
Liz Fitzsimmons. Nita Satino. Marty Baker.
Here.
Roland Agbade. And Bruce Lesh. All right. We just barely have quorum here.
Okay. Don't anybody leave early.
No,
Thank you
Andrew, this is Marianne Harms. I'm here. If you've gotten me in, I had difficulty joining the group. My apologies.
Not a problem. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. And we do have you marked down here.
Excellent. Well, next up on the agenda, ladies and gentlemen, is the MHA chairperson announcement. So I think we will just give Secretary McCord prerogative to make any announcements he may have had in mind later on when we get to our new and old business section. So for now, we can advance to the approval of the minutes. If and perhaps anyone noted any needs for edits or changes, additional storytelling. And then hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
Bob, I'll motion that we approve the minutes.
I second.
Dan, Burton, thank you, gentlemen. All in favor? All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Anyone disapproving or abstaining? Okay, the minutes are accepted as submitted. So next up would be manager report, and I get to hand off to you, Ariane.
Thank you very much, Bob. It's nice to see everyone. I'd like to start by introducing our second assistant administrator to join MHAA, which is Martha Waldron. She joined us at the end of August. We're very pleased to have her on board, and I'm going to turn it over to her so that she can tell you a little bit more about herself.
Thanks, Ariane. Good morning, everyone. My name is Martha Waldron. I'm very excited to be on board with the MHAA team within the Maryland Historical Trust. I started in August, so it's been kind of a whirlwind first 2 months. And so far it's been really great, and very excited to be working with a variety of grantees on a variety of projects all over the state. I'm coming to MHAA from several nonprofits. Most recently, I was working at the Maryland Center for History and Culture, formerly known as the Maryland Historical Society, And before that, I was with Pride of Baltimore and Living Classrooms Foundation. I am wrapping up my Master's in Cultural Heritage Management from Johns Hopkins University. I'll be graduating in December. And so I'm really looking forward to utilizing some of those skills and really people-centered approaches to heritage tourism in this role. So looking forward to meeting all of you at some point, hopefully in person or, again, virtually. And thank you for the warm welcome.
Great. Thank you, Martha. We're really thrilled to have you with us. And Martha has jumped right in on her second day. She was recording the orientation session for the fiscal year 23 grantees and did it beautifully. So with that, I'll move on to a quick report on the financing fund. Checking in with our financial staff. We're showing $41,558.32 in the financing fund currently. And a more detailed report was included in the meeting materials. So if anybody has any questions, we'd be happy to try and field those.
Any notable activity, plus or minus, since the last report, our last meeting?
So the last report that we gave, there was about 12,000 in the financing fund. And I think the most notable thing that we can attribute to the uptick is that a lot of the fiscal year 20 grants closed out at the end of September of 22. And if some of those went unused or we had some discrepancies that we had to clean up, that happened at that time. But nothing of larger note.
Nothing out of the ordinary, but it's nice to be reminded what the ordinary is. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
The only thing related to the financing fund that will come up later as a discussion item is we did realize that because of COVID, we took a pause. The authority seemed to have taken a pause in reserving some emergency funds for the financial fund. It's something that in past years was done, and Secretary McCord wanted to bring that up as an option for the authority to discuss today. So we'll be doing that later in the agenda. Okay. All right.
Any other questions or comments? We're ready to roll on. No?
Okay.
Okay.
Racial Equity Working Group. So originally we had hoped that Symphonic Strategies would be able to present their report to all of you today. That was the goal, and I think it's what we stated at the last meeting. Unfortunately, Dila Baba, who was the Symphonic staff person that we're working most closely with, she had a medical emergency that prevented the report from being ready for today's meeting. She is fine, and things are continuing to move forward. I can tell you that we have received a draft report. We have given feedback to Symphonic. They are in their final stages of doing revisions. The way the report is being structured is going to play out in a way that reflects an analysis of policy documents, the grant process, the themes that the heritage areas and grant recipients structure their requests around, and also look at demographics and quantity versus value of grants received over the years. So the goal is for that report to now be completed by the first week of November. And when I spoke to Secretary McCord about this sort of shift in the timetable of the report, his suggestion was going to be to hold a special meeting of the authority for Adila to present that report to all of you. And I'd like to go ahead and request if everyone could possibly hold the day of November 10th. We're looking at a meeting somewhere between 1 and 5 o'clock on November 10th. Secretary McCord is currently holding that time on his calendar. We will send a doodle poll out to everyone to nail this down a little bit more firmly, but that is the tentative plan at this time.
The hours again, please.
It'll be sometime between 1 and 5 o'clock,
Okay,
shooting for November 10th, and we'll send a doodle poll out so that we can
thank you.
get that confirmed. And we'd really like for the report to be able to be presented to all of you, in that first week of November, certainly before we go into holiday season and this year is over with. Okay, and that's all I have to report on that. Are there any questions? Okay.
No, thank you.
For the marketing working group update, this is just a mention that staff, MHA staff, is sort of gearing up to get this working group back in motion. Right now, we're tentatively looking at having the working group sort of start up again in January. We really wanted to get through our work with the racial equity group first before re-engaging fully with the marketing group. MHA staff is spending the time between now and then looking over the minutes and the definitions and the goals that were discussed, previously, so that we can come to this in January, feeling kind of up to date on everything that's happened prior. So just to mention that we're still shooting for January for getting the marketing working group up and going again.
Will it be appropriate for us to consider being sure that the marketing working group is able to participate on the 10th as well? And if so, then let's doodle poll them.
It's a good question. I will take a look at those individuals and certainly sit.
I guess what I would wonder is if we have to take some special action of approval of the racial equity working group report, then and I'm sure we can figure out some way to do it. But if they're going to be giving a good brief, then it's certainly a good opportunity for the marketing group to seize along with us.
Yeah. Okay. We can certainly take that into consideration and see what everyone's availability is like. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you for the suggestion.
All right. May I have a question? This is
Yes.
Natalie. Would we be planning that meeting would be virtual or in person? I prefer that we meet in person, but
For the November racial equity working group?
Yes.
At this point, it's planned as a virtual meeting.
Is it possible to consider an in-person meeting? That's my suggestion. So
Unfortunately, I can certainly explore it with the Symphonic team, but they are not located locally. Some of their staff is actually out in Utah, and they had not factored in a trip for that meeting. We could certainly, discuss it and see if it's feasible. But right now, it is scheduled as virtual.
I guess my suggestion is if we met, even if they were virtual, but if we were together.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right. I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for the suggestion. Okay. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to Andrew, who will provide some additional updates on our 23 grant round and our recent survey.
Thank you. Yes. So I'm happy to report that our fiscal year 23 grant round is off to a great start. We have been working closely with our roughly 100 grantees to get our grant agreements underway. But the big update that I have is that there's actually sort of a significant transition going on with the MHT grant staff, who in previous years have provided us with a lot of great help in generating and processing the grant agreements as we prepare to send them out for signature. Because of this year, MHAA staff will be picking up the mantle and leading the way on the generation of grant agreements. That being said, we have been able to implement a handful of time-saving policies and tech solutions that should allow us to still hit our goal of getting the grant agreements out sometime between December and January. Of course, our number one priority is getting the management grants out as soon as possible so our heritage areas can continue to do the great work they're already doing. And then after that, we have a handful of high priority capital grants that are fairly time sensitive that we're working towards. But all this to say, we are on track despite a handful of setbacks with staffing changes. So we should be looking towards our December to January deadline. Any questions on fiscal year 23? All right, great. So then
Commendation for keeping up with it, and Martha, I'm sure you've gotten thrown into the deep end on that. So thank you for being flexible and assertive for us. We appreciate that.
Yes, absolutely. And it looks like we have a hand from Liz Chateau.
Nope. Liz?
We can't hear you if you're talking, Liz.
Sorry. I just wondered if the project grant grantees have been made aware of this timeline and if you need the directors to do anything on that front.
Oh, we certainly appreciate the offer. Our orientation videos did at least tell our grantees that they can expect to receive their grant agreements sometime between December and January. But if we anticipate missing that target, if anything comes up that would delay us, we will absolutely reach out, and we certainly appreciate the offer to share that with our grantees.
All right. Thanks, Andrew.
Sure thing.
Liz.
All right. So then the final part of our management update here is just a brief update on the survey that I've been discussing over our past 2 quarterly meetings. If you'll recall, for fiscal year 23, we did have a decrease in the amount of grant applications and the total ask amount by roughly 30% for each party. And one of the steps we took to understand this decrease in request was to conduct a survey of past applicants who did not apply for fiscal year 23. So folks who had applied in the past but didn't come in this time. We sent this short 3-question survey out to around 450 organizations, and we received roughly 40 responses. So we're looking at around a 9% response rate. And having compiled the data, we really had 3 sort of big takeaways, though of course we are working with a fairly small response rate, so take these takeaways with a grain of salt. The first big takeaway that was kind of a surprise was that going into this survey, we expected to see that the impact of COVID was going to be one of the main impediments to folks applying for our grants. This was actually only mentioned by about 10% of respondents, though. Yes, Lucia, I do agree that a fairly small response rate does need to be taken into account when we're looking at this data. So yes, the first point here was in regards to COVID. Only around 10% of individuals polled here mentioned COVID as being an impediment to applying, though of course this is a case where confirmation bias may be considered, since if they are, of course, too busy to apply for a grant, they may well be too busy to respond to a survey. The second point that did come up quite frequently, though, was applicants did have a significant challenge with our application process. Many individuals mentioned that the application either took too long to complete or was too complex, or that our website was unwieldy. And this is something that we really have taken quite seriously for this year. We're looking at ways to make the application process a little bit easier for anyone who has sort of been on the other side and has applied for our program. You know that our application could certainly use a little bit of modernizing to make it easier for folks to sort of go through the process. And then the final takeaway that we had here that came across the most frequently was that organizations mentioned that they struggled to come up with the matching funds required to apply for this grant. Now, this could be because they are not aware that we have recently changed the matching requirements to allow any combination of cash and in-kind. So we do want to stress that that could just be a case where we as MHAA staff need to share that information more widely. But that did come up the most frequently, with about 25%, about a quarter of respondents mentioning the match was in some way a barrier to their application. So again, this is a very small sample size of the individuals that we had access to, but at the moment it's sort of the best glimpse as to why we saw this significant decrease. And our key action items after this are going to be simplifying the application in whatever way possible and making sure individuals know that they can use any combination of cash and in-kind to fulfill their match requirement. As always, the full report is available now on our Microsoft Teams as opposed to our Google Drive. But if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to dive into them.
Well, my reaction is I don't think any of us would be surprised by, make the application process easier and make the match requirement easier. Whether we got 9% or 99%, we probably would have expected to hear those two things being proffered as a problem. So I think we remain committed to trying to make things as easy as possible, but there are limits, and we certainly have been looking at the structure of the match requirement fairly intensively. I don't know whether we've yet done everything we might possibly do, but it does feel like asking folks this year who didn't apply might have been just sort of a miss in timing, right? If there's an opportunity for new match requirements to become better known, then perhaps we'll get a better response relative to that. So it's not a discouraging response unless anyone pointed out something on page 13 or something that was an error. Then that's what you're left with as actionable, the two actionable categories, correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Any other observations from folks on that?
I think we have a hand from Elizabeth.
Thanks, Andrew. I guess just an observation. I think the critique about the applications being somewhat complicated to fill out for the applicant is helpful information. I'm not sure that it's surprising, and so there's work for us to do there. I guess one of the things that makes me wonder is, as we are looking at what the Governor's Grants Office is doing and the Mega Council, trying to create a single grant application portal for all applicants for state funds, I don't see that being a way to streamline and simplify necessarily the grant application for grant applicants. So I just think this is an interesting data point for us. We're hearing from our applicants they want a more simplified approach, and I don't see how a one-size-fits-all grant portal is going to be successful in that regard. So.
Yeah,
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree as well. Sorry, this is Marty. If I could chime in too. We have found that one of the ways we've tried to simplify our application process is by having some fields that either, auto-populate or have parameters on them to ensure that they're meeting the requirements of the application. And that's part of where we're having trouble figuring out how a generalized approach would actually make it easier for applicants. It's counterintuitive.
And Marianne, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, it is the ratio of 50% cash or whatever matching grants. Is that a state mandate, or is it something that we can adjust as an independent entity?
So as it stands now, folks are able to use any combination of cash and in-kind, and this was a decision laid out in fiscal year 20 by the authority. We do have the ability to adjust that ratio.
Okay, and also, I agree about the forms. I mean, we're rather unique in that we are dealing in some cases with very small organizations that are volunteer, that don't have large staffs and are trying to preserve historic properties or different types of entities that have historical value. So I think we're rather unique, and I certainly agree that, a statewide form would not be applicable to our organization based on what we try to do, which is saving historic entities within the state. And many organizations are way too small to be able to deal with something that intricate.
Thank you. Yes, I completely agree. And I see we also have a hand from Amy.
I am having some technical difficulties.
We can hear you now.
One thing I want to say about the form business is, like, I would agree, unfortunately. I do think the application is very onerous, but we just recently did that on my team for one of my programs. And honestly, I would think the best thing you could do, and I'm anti the group form too, by the way, because we have a lot of very specific things that don't fall into line there either. But you might want to think about trying to evaluate it from a perspective of what I found with us is that we took something that previously was just the paper application, and when we put it into an electronic format, I don't know that we did the best evaluation of it to determine what things could, again, talking about someone's mentioning self-populating things, like we sort of just said, oh, this is the paper version and these are the questions we ask, and then put it right into an online thing. I would also challenge you to look at the questions that you're asking and why, and is it really relevant and necessary? I find that I think some of them are kind of asking the same thing, but maybe 2 or 3 different ways. I'm happy to share with you guys what we did, like what we got down to for our community investment tax credit program, which again was pretty, going back to, you're dealing with a lot of nonprofits of various sizes and capabilities, and we are too, to kind of boil it down to a couple key questions and a couple things that could also be drop-down lists and things like that. So at any rate, I would definitely encourage it, because I think it's been adapted over the time, but I do still think for smaller groups and even for some of the larger ones that, anyway. So I'm a supporter, and let me know if you want to have a chat or you want to see what we went from to what we did, but really think about what is the information you need to know for administration of your program, and what I also found, there's certain information we could just be getting when we get it when we get our reporting. So why are we asking for it up front in the application?
Yeah, absolutely. That came through entirely in the survey as well. Folks mentioned specifically that they felt like they were being asked the same question multiple times, and they weren't sure what utility certain questions had in the actual application process. So that would be incredibly helpful if you could send us a new copy of the application.
Sure. Your reviewers would also probably love it too. I will say, the year we switched from it, our reviewers were like, oh my gosh, this is so much easier to review. Like, I had a hard time getting reviewers for this one program because everybody's like, oh my God, it's so painful. So it was much more clear to them what was important. And, anyway, it also, it helps everybody.
I believe Secretary McCord has joined us.
He has joined us, and we'll hand over to him. Secretary, we're discussing the results of the survey that was fielded about our application process, and are addressing 2 things that staff had identified as the most actionable items. One was to look at if we have any ability to make the application process less onerous, and the second would be if there's any further adjustments we might do in order to ease the match requirements. We've had some good discussion already on the making it easier, and so I think it's in the relentless cycle of grant making, we're going to be giving all of due attention to the current awards until we can get past that, but there may be some window of opportunity after that, and I think several suggestions have come forward. A lot of colleagues here on the authority and within their own agencies gone through a process of trying to figure out how to simplify I do think that asking the reviewers was an excellent suggestion, because they may be have some keen recent insight on stuff that they felt like was duplicated. If we're duplicating stuff, then that's a low hanging fruit. If we could figure out how to self-populate some of that stuff, so it's worth us doing to the extent that we can. If there is in fact a statewide requirement to the one size fits all or one stop shopping for grants that Elizabeth was talking about, it'd be interesting to see if we can know the time frame that's happening. So that ideally we won't invest our own time on our grant application only to find out that we're going to be required to take some other approach or something. But so that seems like it would be good to assess if we can, and then maybe we can find some wiggle room on our schedule in the coming months to have a look at this.
Thank you, Bob. I'm also concerned about the statewide process and how it might affect MHT and MHAA's issues. So I'm a fan of exempting us from that statewide process, and I will continue to advocate in that direction. Go ahead, Amy, got your hand up?
So yeah, I just want to add to that too. Bob, you're such a gentleman, which is why I adore you. But I would absolutely say too, because we're on the exemption bus. If there's a bus, we're getting on it. We might like to drive it as well and provide service and maintenance. But the best approach, to be honest with you, is to go ahead and address it, correct it, and be able to, because let me just say, they're not really in a place where anybody's ready to tell us to do something tomorrow. And I think I know one strategy on our end that we are, because we have several programs that are already in an online system and all this other stuff. But the better approach is to address this sooner rather than later, to say, hey, I've already got, because let me tell you, if your constituent base is saying your application's problematic or whatever, then that's a sure way to get you off the exemption bus. So I'd make the changes sooner rather than later. Like, it sounds like Andrew's already on that path to have them in place for the next round. And, I think that's the better strategy.
Better idea.
I'm good with that also. Go ahead. Anyone else on this topic? All right. Are we up for the Coalition Heritage Areas report?
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Is it afternoon? No, good morning. It feels like afternoon when you get up at 4. Because of the discussion about the Mega Council, I do want to address the fact that we do have a director, Gail Owings, who has really done outstanding work. I don't want to use the word fighting, but I'll say helpfully educating the Mega Council on the need for exemption for this program and other programs. Really bringing in the fact that this federal perspective that everything has to be through the federal codes is really inappropriate or not useful, or will pretty much be detrimental to a number of the organizations that have a very good, and like this MHAA granting program, we're trying to refine it, but we're trying to refine it toward access rather than more barriers. And so we really appreciate all the work that MHAA is doing. And I just want to give a shout out to Gail, because these meetings are very frustrating, and we really appreciate the fact that she is fighting the good fight for us all on that. Yes, thank you. In addition to that, our report will also include the fact that we had a very successful MACO. For those who don't know, that's the Maryland Association of Counties. I'm sure everybody here knows that. And that was in Ocean City. And what we are doing at MACO is making those vital connections, having those great conversations. One of the great conversations we had was with Governor Hogan, who specifically asked the coalition to come in for some supplemental funding So we have done that. We have drafted a letter to you, Secretary McCord, a memo, and to copy the Maryland Heritage Area Authority. We'd like for you all to review that and give it your consideration. And I can go into very specifics about why we feel this is needed and why we appreciate the governor reaching out to us on that. If you would like me to do that, I'm happy to do that.
Lucille, I'd like to tell you that I am looking forward to seeing your letter, but I have instructed my budget people to start the process of preparing the supplemental request. So I will anxiously await your letter, but I want to get the process going internally from the budget office here. So I'm saying yes ahead of your letter, and we're going to make sure that we do what we can to get that request in.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Secretary McCord. I thought you had already seen it.
No, I may have. You're talking about your memo.
Yes, sir.
I got the memo. There was something different than I said. No, I have the memo and have it right here.
Okay, great.
Based on the memo, I have asked my people to do it. So if you had something else coming to me.
No. That was what we had. But we're happy to present more to you if it's needed.
No. If I need something else, I'll be back in touch with you. But,
okay.
I've got that piece rolling for you. I just wanted you to know that I'm a fan, and I have not simply been a fan. I am just making sure that you understand that I have that thing rolling through our lovely budget process. So it's on its way.
Great. We really appreciate that very much, and we're here to assist with that. And thank you all for that support. Also at MACO, what we often do is present. It's one of the ways to get the program out front and center. This year, I was representing the coalition, but presented on Destination Maryland, Tourism for the Future. And that ended up being a very vigorous discussion about how heritage tourism blends into and enhances tourism as a whole, and what we really bring to the table, and the uniqueness of the Maryland program, which is really stunning. I've talked to Ariana about this recently. Used to be 5 states. Now it's only 3 states in the United States that have a state-based heritage area program. And Maryland is still considered a leader, although the folks in Pennsylvania want to argue with that, but they're wrong. So we're really very pleased with the value placed in Maryland with this program. I think it's really important. Also, a lot of the directors are working on 5-year plans. Those of us that have a different direction right now, for me, a national direction, are wrapping that into a different process, and I will address that later. And many of us are also getting our mini grant programs out. In my case, it's a seed grant program, but it's the same thing with everyone. It's a chance to get these very small organizations, and also organizations that just need a little bit of help, to get them comfortable with the grant process and to really enhance product development and tell the story. And so that's happening throughout the state right now. And that's our very quick report.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Then we have Heritage Area Director highlight. Lori.
Liz, it looks like you're up.
Yeah. Hello. Thanks for bearing with me there. So yeah, just a couple of things from our heritage area. First, everyone should have received an invitation to our upcoming annual meeting. We call it a year in review. Details are also available on the link here, and I'm happy to resend it. We're going to be at the beautiful Antrim 1884, a historic inn in Tawnytown, and we're going to start with a cocktail hour at 6:30, then move on to our program, which includes a presentation from the newly retired manager of cultural resources from Gettysburg National Military Park. That's just a stone's throw from Tawnytown. And so we'd be very happy to see any of you there. Let me know if you need me to resend that invitation. Andrew, if you want to move us on there, thank you. So the Battle of Antietam and the Battle of South Mountain marked their 160th anniversaries this year. Overall, Antietam had the highest visitation since the 150th anniversary events in 2012. We've managed a soft opening of the exhibit that you see here. It was available in time for the anniversaries. It's a reinterpretation of the front parlor at Antietam's Newcomer House, which we operate as a visitor center for the heart of the Civil War. The interpretive panel you see here, and along with some others that are installed, are currently prototypes. We've been testing in a testing phase. These final versions are happening along with a soundscape in the room with support from a recent MHAA grant, and we expect that to be open in by Thanksgiving. And then next one, thank you. So if you think the Battle of Gettysburg began and ended in Pennsylvania, think again. All three heart of the Civil War counties were involved in both the invasion and the retreat, and no Gettysburg pilgrimage will be complete without a visit to Falling Waters 1863 battlefield. And we've now got a more viable visitor destination there thanks to MHAA support for the parking area. You see it here in an almost completed state, and this is where, after a long and skirmish-filled Confederate retreat through Washington County, the Southern forces finally crossed the Potomac into Virginia. We often think of battlefields in terms of our national and our state parks. This bit of hallowed ground is owned and stewarded by an all-volunteer nonprofit that does offer battlefield tours. They will cut the ribbon here, where there's also a Civil War Trails Wayside interpretation on October 27th. And we're really happy that this is going to be open in time for the Gettysburg 160th anniversary coming up in July. And then the next one, please. So we've also been active with Monocacy Battlefield as well. We helped cut the ribbon on the interpretive wayside you see at the lower right. This is an MHAA funded project undertaken by the Monocacy Battlefield Foundation. And then we've also been providing feedback on design concepts and scripts for the new visitor center exhibits. This is a current project happening with MHAA funding, and you see one of those design schematics there at the upper left. And then 5, please, our next one. And this here is a project for which we can take no actual credit, but I don't want to leave it out because this is our state battlefield. And I want to note that Preservation Maryland recently unveiled their rebranding plan and graphics like the one you see here that will greatly enhance the visitor experience in the heart of the Civil War. As our partners begin to employ the new branding, this somewhat fractured, disjointed battlefield is going to become more understandable and more navigable to our visitors. So that's my report, very battlefield oriented report for you from the heart of the Civil War.
Thank you very much.
And it sounds like I'm actually up next. Shantae is at the National Alliance. I don't have slides, just wanted to quickly update everyone about our National Heritage Area. As you all know, we are a state-based heritage area. We are attempting to become the 56th National Heritage Area. You all have heard as to why we inform the nation's story, and I won't go into that now, though if you ever want to be bored, I would love to talk to you more specifically about it. It's very exciting. We have passed the House of Representatives. We are now looking like we're going to be attached to a major bill in the Senate, and we'll get through this session. This will be rather remarkably quick, and we're really pleased about this. It will also, I think, enhance what all of us do here in the state of Maryland. So it isn't just a Southern Maryland National Heritage Area, it's another Maryland National Heritage Area, and why Maryland is so important in our nation's story. And on a quick side note, I don't have the fabulous slides today, been too busy, but Southern Maryland was able to host the opening of the Crossroads exhibit with the Smithsonian and with the Maryland Humanities, the first stop in their tour of this rural America exhibit. And I will get you all some pictures next time. It was quite remarkable. We had a big opening ceremony. The exhibit is located in a barn that's being rehabilitated, I think would be the best way to put it. And so it was really a wonderful exhibit funded through a seed grant, also through the Maryland through the Maryland Humanities and Smithsonian. So great work out there with everyone. And thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, we're ready for the action items. Boundary amendment request is first.
Yes, so our only action item for this Recorder is a request from the Montgomery County Heritage Areas for the addition of the Aspen Hill Pet Cemetery to their heritage area. And for that amendment, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Sarah.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Good.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So, I think this, if this passes, it will be our first pet cemetery in the heritage area. You, in your documents that I sent ahead, I think have the overview of its history, its significance. It's truly, it's a little bit macabre, but it's more lively than deadly. And it's a charming piece of property with mature funerary shrubberies and trees, and a really nice collection of funerary ornaments. The Montgomery County Humane Society has taken over the property, and they intend to use it as an educational and service providing for county pet owners, particularly focusing on underserved communities. There's a small core of historic but not stunning buildings, a house, the old kennel, and an office space. And they will have camps to teach people, how to train your dog, how to pick the right dog. They'll do all kinds of community things. This is already well used by the community, as there's very little open space in this area. And you can see it's quite close to what the heritage area border. And so we think it has really outstanding opportunity for visitors and tourism, for folks to see the history of people and pets and that interaction that has become so significant.
Anyone have any questions on this one? Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Yeah, Sarah, could you just, it's interesting. It's certainly unique. I'm wondering, can you speak to how this will stimulate heritage tourism, or how you're thinking? I can certainly understand it as a community resource that serves the local community, which is important. But I'm just sort of curious about the tourism potential of this space.
So, as you know, in the last 20 or 30 years, there's been a huge shift from pets just being kind of underfoot, though we love them all, to where pets are going places with people. And one of the things that they want to do at the outdoor space is have things, walks, and they want to have people have weddings there where they can bring their dogs to the wedding. The history of it, and because it's a big open space, is really quite interesting. As you'll note in the documentation, there are some famous dogs and pets that are buried there, so that's a draw. The fact that it's an outdoor space where you can bring your pet, I think, is a huge draw. And they also have a researchable archive, which they're finding incredibly interesting things. LBJ, Lady Bird, brought their 3 beagles. You remember him and her that he picked up by the actual ears. So they were cremated at Aspen Hill, and she listed her address. She was a housewife from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. So there are all these little nuggets because it's located so close to DC. There are embassy pets there. There are just a lot of stories that tie into the DC location, and then that people, the tradition of people seeing pets as family and taking them places.
Great, thanks.
All right, thanks, Elizabeth. Amy.
So, quick question, I think maybe building on that a little bit is, and all those things are good and interesting, how, I'm guessing that is not currently, how's that going to be marketed? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, how's that, you know all that, you just shared all that with us, but like, how is it going to be really wrapped into and like incorporated into like the overall messaging about this being a destination place? And are they all, like, again, even what you're saying about like an open space where people can come with their current pets to roam free, but like, you know, I mean, like, how is that all those things are good, but I guess I'm thinking, like, is that something they currently do? Like, do they currently say to people, hey, it's, you know, come, you know, outdoor pet day, or, you know what I'm getting at? Like, how is this really going to be engaged and incorporated into the overall story and the overall use? And also, goodness gracious, that's not what they do on the regular. So are they prepared for when someone says, come to the cemetery and you can all bring your dogs here and walk around, or like, you know what I mean? Do they have the capacity staff-wise to ramp up for visitorship?
Yes, so this is one of those wonderful moments in a heritage area director's life where a very, very well pulled together organization is coming in to join the heritage area. So they have a very active core group of volunteers. They are very active and successful with their fundraising. The property itself is fenced, so it's in quite a busy area, but the county, the place itself is well known in the county and in the neighborhood. And I think with the help of the heritage area, we'll be promoting it both as something connected thematically to the ag reserve, and you know, like different breeds of dogs had different jobs, you know, that sort of thing. Promoting it as in its proximity to DC. But they're very pulled together and they're very high profile as it stands. And we hope that them being part of the heritage area, they can elevate even further. Did that answer?
Natalie. This is Natalie. Can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
Is this part of the heritage area's plan? Is it this type of entity, or this type of, you know, does it fit in your heritage area plan? Is what I'm asking.
Natalie, I only heard part of that. Your question, let me see if I got it right. Does it fit in with our heritage area themes and programs?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Sorry.
It does. Particularly with the relationship between people and animals. As you know, we've got the ag reserve. We have a huge part of our story is the change from a rural county to an urban county. And as your working dog moves into your apartment, because you no longer have a farm, there's some really interesting stories there that are actually very educational for people to, like, you know, don't get a giant herding dog if you live in an apartment. But some simple, you know, educational things like that. And the history of people and animals is really very interesting. it's I've been trying to think what it's akin to. It's not really akin to fashion or something like that. It's not disposable. I mean, we share our houses with them, and we know very little about their history. And you know what the cemetery is a place that's showing how much pets mean to people that like buy a tombstone for their dog or their cat. And why is that? You know, how did that come about in human civilization?
Go ahead, Bob.
I'll offer commentary, which I don't know whether helps or hurts, but you know, every time we're looking at any sort of boundary adjustment, it's always a little awkward because pixelating, you know, a single feature, a single story, something like that, and trying to figure out whether it's, you know, it's qualifying in on its own singular merit, which I think is a little disingenuous to the, you know, to the concept of how heritage areas, you know, function as an aggregate of all these pieces. So, you know, this one feels a little strange, right? A pet cemetery. You know, I love my pets, but I kind of favor the backyard myself. You know, I'll also say this: my wife and I go on strange little trips that we call airdrop weekends, where we go figure out, you know, why somebody would want to live in Cleveland or Buffalo or something. And if there's a cemetery, you know, and there often is a cemetery of note within the city, it's always on the list of places that we go, just to kind of try to understand the history and the character and you know, the who is there and stuff. I've never heard of this pet cemetery. I live in Montgomery. I'll go. I want to go see what it's about, just to try to wrap my mind around it a little bit. So
we'll schedule a tour.
Huh?
We'll schedule a tour.
Okay, sounds good. Anyway, I mean, is that, you know, people are interested in all kinds of things, and a lot of people are seriously interested in their pets.
Yes, yeah, and it's because it's called a pet cemetery. You can't help but fall back into the Stephen King part of it, but it actually is.
There's a market.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, there's that. When you're there, when I did my first tour of it, I was like, what shoes do you wear to hike around and look at dead animals? And I was so pleasantly surprised because it's a peaceful and lovely, it's what a cemetery should be, and it doesn't scream Stephen King stuff. And so I appreciate your input, Bob, because I think it's one of those offbeat places that does answer a lot of questions.
Go ahead, Pete. You got your hand up.
Thank you. You know, I will. Let me just start by saying that the report submitted with this is I thought, particularly well done research. I'll confess that this is possibly the most entertaining boundary amendment proposal that it has ever been my pleasure to review. I agree with Bob, and you know, I think that there's insight into the transformation of a landscape from farm field to pet cemetery. If that doesn't tell you more about the gentrifying impacts of proximity to Washington on a formerly rural landscape, I can think of no better example. And this might confirm everything that folks from the Eastern Shore think about Montgomery County. But there I think there is something genuine about its contribution or potential contribution to the heritage area here, and I'm surprised at how much I was impressed by this. I've never visited a pet cemetery. This might be my first one.
Definitely, we'll have a tour. Thank you.
Excuse me, this is Natalie again. And
yes.
I feel like this might be one of those amendments that requires a tour for some of us, most of us, to give it a fair chance. But that's my suggestion. before we vote on it.
How does everybody feel about that?
I got a hand up from Bert.
Yeah, just a quick question. I was wondering how old this cemetery is, and when you start talking about heritage, does it have some value as a heritage site? And I mean, does it go back a long ways?
Yes, it's founded in 1921.
Oh,
it's
wow.
Fifth oldest pet cemetery operating in the United States.
Oh my goodness gracious!
We have a World War I division mascot and hero war dog buried there. We have Ricky, a sled dog that was in 2 of Admiral Byrd's expeditions to Antarctica.
Wow.
In some of these stories, the character, those become the characters in the stories, and why. You get to talk about a working dog that was a war dog that saved, like he could hear torpedoes or bombs, the things that blow up. He heard them before people on the deck of the ship did, and he would get down. So the soldiers around him knew to hit the dirt, and he saved all these people. But it becomes almost a short story book opening to many different types of stories in our area of like what makes why is a sled dog in Admiral Byrd's expedition to Antarctica, why is that important? And there's a whole story there of the change in the early 1900s of exploration, of how animals expedited exploration. But so there's a lot of story. I kind of look at this place as really literally like a collection of stories that open windows into different periods of time.
This falls into the historic cemetery category, just like Bob was saying. You can go into a cemetery and find stories all over the place. They go to the store here, and all of them are going to Greenmount and other cemeteries, and you can open up the cemetery to incredible stories, just like you're saying. So I think it's a great idea.
Thank you.
So Sarah, may I chime in? This is Marianne Hahn.
Yes.
I was absolutely fascinated by this. I read the whole thing. And I just think it's being marketed in the wrong way. It is historic. The monuments were so unusual, and the stories behind them. And that war hero, that dog was 20 years old. Well, I've got German Shepherds that we usually buried with a backhoe on a certain hill on our farm, and that was where our pet cemetery was. And so 20 years is an amazing lifespan for a war hero. And that was just one of the little things that I picked up on. But the famous people that are involved with this, I think, are one of the fascinating things. And the little vignettes that you've spoken about, instead of, focusing on Pet Cemetery, it's a historical cemetery with a certain background. I thought, the statuary, the monuments were wonderful. And it is unique. And in the story, it said that the community fought development so that they could retain that. So isn't this what our organization is about? Each project is unique. I must admit, this is the most unique one. But I think worded in a different way and focusing on the historical significance of this would make it more amenable to fitting in with our organization. But it is a gem. I mean, it's just a gem. And people, if people don't know about it, if they did know about it, they would go see it. I would, if I was in that area. So I think it's an amazing project. And because it's so different, perhaps we need to stretch our imaginations a little bit about what is historic in this area.
Thank you. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. It is the stories that are important. And the one final addition that I have to the stories are many of the graves, the records have gotten lost in the archives, as often happens in archives. There is a large number of Asian obelisks with calligraphy, and people have always thought those were the burial spots of dogs from Asia. And we're starting to wonder if the Chinese embassy did not have a lot of people with dogs, and there are about 15 of these really fancy obelisks out there. But so that's a story that we don't have a lot on the Asian Pacific, and different people and how they loved their dogs. But that opens that door.
Any other questions for Sarah? I can't see everybody at the same time, but you have to speak up if I can't see you. All right. My only commentary is that our relationship to our pets is a different thing and an evolving thing, but it's also their relationship to us, and that story of that relationship and how it fits into a bigger history is potentially what will make this an attraction that you're trying to advocate for. So I'm not going to try to push this one way or another. If I could have a motion, I'd entertain the motion.
I so move.
All right, Bert.
I'll second Pete Lesher.
Motion by Bert and a second by Pete Lesher. Any further discussion? All right. Now I'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right.
Abstain.
Motion carries. Abstain. Okay. Abstain. And is that you? I don't have a name on that.
Sorry, it's Amy. I'm also abstaining.
Natalie and Amy are both abstaining. Okay. We'll record it as such. Thank you very much. All right. The motion carries. All right.
I kind of wanted to say I didn't have a dog in that fight.
No. Okay. There you go. There you go. I think Amy, that had to be said.
I
couldn't
will.
help myself.
I will organize a tour and let you all know while we still have good weather. And so those that are interested, please come on out and see it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sarah. Thanks for the effort. So we have discussion items here, emergency funds. And this is, I guess it's easiest for me to try to describe this. This is considering adding acquisition or option to acquire as an eligible expense for significant properties. We've had a situation recently where that possibility was available, and to allow a heritage area to secure the option to purchase something as an emergency thing. Things might come onto the market at any time, and if that's a possibility, I was going to ask the authority to consider whether that would be an appropriate use of emergency funds. Anyway, that's kind of the short of it. If anybody wants further explanation, Ariane has the details of the recent experience, but we need to think about whether or not when something comes onto the market that's historically significant and the heritage area would like to have the opportunity to acquire it, would that be an appropriate use of emergency funding? I know emergency funding has been used for all other kinds of things, but I wanted to get that discussion going to see if anybody has that. Nope. I have the question from Pete on, does the statute allow funds to be applied to property acquisition? And if the answer is yes, I
Yes.
think
Yes. Yes, it does.
yes. Rianne was with us every step of the way on the possibility of the other.
Yep.
And like I said, we're not. That's why I say acquisition or option to acquire, because I don't want somebody to say, hey, this historic little brick house is now available and I need $350,000 to buy it tomorrow. That's not what I'm looking for here. I'm looking for if someone has the option to purchase it and then they can put their other financing together. If there's some bit of money that's put on the option to purchase it, we may be able to save things from going into hands of folks who may not want to preserve it. So just another possibility for using a portion of the emergency grants for that process. So that's kind of the short of it. And anybody has questions, we can try to answer. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, I would just say I think that the case that you stated in brief up front is the essence of it. I mean, the initial protection or conservation of resources is step one for almost all of the other interests that we have to follow. So it's good that we allow for it. We should allow for it in response to some immediate opportunity or need. We would always like emergency applications to go into the regular pipeline if it's at all possible, but it's not always possible. Therefore, we're always looking at it. And I think the only other thing I have, so I trend favorably towards this. The only thing I do is I have this little niggling thing in the back of my mind that says these could be expensive emergency grants, but often our emergency grants are relatively expensive because they end up having to be some sort of, capital, emergency protection or restoration, or a roof that's failing, or something that's about to be sold and lost. Boy, we sure wouldn't want to have too many opportunities lost like that.
Thanks, Bob. We have fixed a lot of roofs, and we've prepared the otter tank so we've done from the bottom to the top, and it'd be nice to, instead of just fixing the roof, fix it so that we have the opportunity to get everything that's under the roof.
Quick interjection: we fixed that otter tank with a real strong measure of support for the otters themselves too.
We did. I was
And
not.
I have an otter in that fight. I'm a big fan of an otter tank. I like the touch me tank. So yeah, different.
Yeah, I was not going to be the chair of the heritage areas that allowed those guys to die of stress because they couldn't get fixed. Every school kid that has ever seen them and knows their names, and you can't grow up in that area without having known those otters. So I wasn't going to be the one taking responsibility for that. So I pushed a little hard on that too. So, but this is just it's just something that the entire body should consider. And if you want to think about it further, we can bring it up at the next meeting. But I just wanted to put that out there for your consideration. And if anybody has further thoughts, we can take it now, or if you want to ponder it before we get together again, you can send your comments in to me, and send your comments to Ariane, and she'll make sure everything comes back to me, so that's easier.
Bob, I'm not sure whether you're seeing my hand or not, but may I make a comment?
No, go right ahead.
No, in a past life, I was a developer, so I am keenly aware that property can come up at the strangest times, and it can be extremely just central to a project you're working on. Say you're creating a little town center and it's historic, and there's one house that you need to acquire that's going to be the center of it, and all of a sudden it comes up for sale. If you do not buy it then, it's lost forever, and it changes the whole complexion of the project you're working on. So I would certainly urge, that we, in some form, we have that available for the times when those kinds of occasions occur. It's really important, because once it's lost, and we can never get it back. So I would certainly vote in favor of this. And are those otters from Southern Maryland that you're referring to?
They were from the Eastern Shore.
Oh, well, they're otters in Southern Maryland, and I know their names. So
Thank you, Marianne, for bringing up otter parody.
yeah.
There you go. And we all know where they're going if they expire, Sarah, don't we? So there we go.
Secretary McCord, I have a question for Rhiann, if I can. Rhiann, can you confirm if the current eligibility language in the emergency grant policy is broad enough to allow for this if the authority wants to agree that having an option to acquire is something that emergency funds would be applied to?
You're still on mute, Rhiann.
Thank you, Bob. I want to look at it to confirm. I don't have it up in front of me, but it's the policy doesn't change what the eligible uses are.
Okay.
So this is clearly an eligible use capital project, and acquisition covers all partial, as we discussed the different kinds of options.
Yeah.
So I don't think that I think the policy is broad enough, but let me look at that and I'll go back to you offline.
I agree. I mean, just my read of it seems that we wouldn't need to change any policy language. This would just be an understanding from the authority that it would be ineligible.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I don't think this requires a vote. I think this is already allowed.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Didn't mean to put it on the spot, but just wanted to bring that up for everyone to hear.
All right, then we don't need the motion, and if we administratively hold a little bit to do that in the emergency funding, and we will not pass on some other emergency. If somebody has a roof destroyed and we're coming at a time where that's got to be fixed, we can fix it. We just need to, I think we need to keep this as one of the things in the mix, not necessarily reserve $25,000 for this. I'm just picking a number out of my head. We don't really need to reserve it. I think we probably just need to make sure that that's part of it's in the mix for significant properties that we would be using it for. And just wanted to actually, make sure that everybody understands it. I view it that way, but, and Rhiann concurred, but I didn't want to have just the executive director and the lawyer and myself, also a lawyer, agreeing to this without the authority understanding that this is something that we think we can do, and that if we're going to go ahead and do it, I don't want anybody to be surprised and say, when's the last time this ever came up? We never heard about this before. So that's the reason it's a discussion item on here today. I said I think we need to talk about this at the meeting. So.
And Secretary McCord, just to clarify, the first bullet point about reserving a portion of the funds for emergency grants, that actually is referring to the fact that the authority used to designate $100,000 in emergency funds from each year's appropriation. And I believe that this was happening prior to COVID, and it was paused during COVID because that money went to other very worthy causes. And the question that we wanted to discuss today is if the authority would like to vote to start with designating that $100,000 in emergency funds for the upcoming fiscal year 24 appropriation.
Okay, so coming out of COVID and back to the way we used to do it.
Yes.
Okay, that's a clearer explanation than I gave for this one other issue. So
yeah, I see them as two separate issues. Yes.
Okay, all right. So reserving a portion of the 24 of the FY24 funding at the same level we did before, $100,000 for reserving that for emergency grants.
Yes.
That's what you're looking for. That's what we need a motion for.
Yes.
We had done a couple years ago, suspended that to try to put the funds wherever we could to make sure we keep people going, and now we're headed back to reserving $100,000 for emergency funds.
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right. So now that you understand that correctly, I could take a motion on that.
I'm happy. This is Amy. I'm happy to make that motion.
Okay. Thanks, Amy. Bob, you have a question or a
That
second?
seems reasonable, as Bob might.
I'll second.
That's a second. Okay, motion and a second. Any other questions or comments on that? All right. One day we'll see each other in person again, and then you'll think that you're totally out of the world. But I'll take I have a motion and a second. I take all in favor of reserving a portion of the FY24 funding in the amount of $100,000 for emergency grants. Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. Thank you very much, and thank you, Ariane, for making sure I got that straight.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
All right. I'm going to move to member appointments and reappointments for the new year.
Yes, sure. So it's just that time of year where we start looking at reappointments and new appointments. And really just a brief mention here that I'll be reaching out to all of you and your agencies to see everyone's interest and ability to be able to continue with the authority. So more to come.
All right, very good. Everybody who's enjoying it and who is contributing and who is, I've had such a good group to deal with all this time. So I'm encouraging everybody to re-up because it's an important process that has to continue past any particular gubernatorial set of terms. So that you will have different people to deal with up and down state government at the appointed levels, and this group is, this group is important to me, and regardless if I'm sitting here or not, this group has to continue to do the good work that it does. And so as many people as are still interested and available in serving, what I'm telling you is if you're thinking about it's about time to roll off, then okay. If you're on the fence about that, I would encourage you to stay and make sure that everything stays on good footing as the reins of government get turned over to a new governor. So that's my little pitch, and it's up to you guys to think about that. And I'm not going to try to sway any personal decisions. I'm just giving you that as a political reality in the world we live in. So just reminding you that I appreciate everyone's service and all of the depth of experience that we have here. If it continues, that's a benefit to the authority beyond any one person's ability to stand or sit in the chair that I sit, or that Bob usually sits in for me. So that's important. And think about your commitment to this organization, and I appreciate it. And I just want that's the part of the discussion that you'll be having as Ariane just tries to touch base with you all. And then member announcements. Any member announcements? I'm not seeing any. New business? Nothing else for us. Can't see everybody's hand at one time. All right. So now I'll take the motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Amy, you're right there. And Pete, thank you very much. Listen, everyone, I appreciate all of the effort that this group has made, all the time I've been associated with it. So I want to make sure that you understand that I'm going to do my best to keep you in the best stead I can as the term comes to an end. That's why I'm trying to make sure that everything that needs to go under my signature will go under my signature as soon as I can get it done. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Right.
Bye. Thank you.